Talk about these things, sometimes things are lost, but when you get a visual, you kind of understand a little bit better. So here's some of my x-rays and some of my pictures along my clubfoot journey. I'll read a couple stories while y'all digest these. Page 2 probably has one that is for real for some people, but other people may be like, oh yeah, that's nothing. So I'm going to get these started passing around. You say these. You live them. So the first page is where I began. The second page is my first surgery, and the last page are my last two surgeries. We'll start out by reading something that I can resonate with. That maybe it's not just Clay's story; that other people have this same story. This is a blog called Brian's Clubfoot Journey. And he says, my name is Brian. I was born on November 9th, 1972 with severe bilateral club feet. I don't remember much about my early childhood. I was told by my parents that I underwent numerous surgeries for the first year of my life, had to wear full leg casts for close to 2 years. My parents told me stories about never learning to crawl. I just propped myself up on my cast and learned to walk that way. Every month, my mother had to soak off my casts in the bathtub because it scared me to have them cut off at the doctor's office. For the first 2 years, I went every month for new casts. After the cast stopped, I moved into braces. I do remember being paraded around at medical conferences and having to stand on tables so other doctors could inspect my ankles. I can remember starting school where I had to wear corrective shoes, while all the other kids got to wear tennis shoes. I had these ugly brown leather shoes, and this teasing started real young in my life. I remember having a normal childhood in terms of being active. I remember running and playing like all the other kids. My doctor in Indiana said, you should always be very thankful, Brian. You'll never be able to play sports, but you should be able to walk. So I, of course, played sports. But it was harder on me than the other kids because I had to work so hard. That's enough of that. That's kind of how this guy grew up. There's another one called The Truth About Talipes, which is one of the terms for club feet. For those of us with club feet, pain is both a motivator and a demotivator. We want to do all the things our family and friends do, all the things our jobs demand of us, but as time goes on, we find it more difficult to ignore our pain. We may seek out other surgical solutions, start to use pain medication with greater frequency, stop doing all the things we love, golf, try other mechanical responses to the pain. We risk addiction with pain medications, less than hoped for results from the surgical procedures, or other disappointing outcomes. We may fall victim to some myriad of professionals who are trying to help us. We risk depression and also the loss of faith of solutions of any kind. So that was one person's story about them growing up, and that's one person's story about being 40. And I can relate with absolutely both of those. So I don't know if the pictures have made it around, but like I said, this is what I've had back in 2010 through 2015. If you see my ankle line, my ankles are, it'd be nice if your legs come down straight and they go into your ankles and they hit the ground straight. Well, that's great. Mine did not. My ankles were turned in. If you look at the bones, they're disjointed inside the foot. So when I would walk, one foot was valgus and one foot was varus, if that makes sense to any of the podiatrists here. This foot would roll out and this foot would roll in. It'd be great if they'd at least do something. If you see the spike on my right heel, there's a cavus foot, and there's a heel that's just this small. That was not real helpful. But if you look at it from a two-dimensional picture, it's like, Clay, you got some things that aren't aligned, you got some things that are messed up, but really you should just stop doing, don't wait till you do anything, and just tolerate this pain as long as you can. So if you'll notice on the what's it called? Personal Identifiable Medical Information Act thing. I used to work at Blue Cross. It's called HIPAA. Thank you. There's a lot of HIPAA information on here. Please don't share it or steal my identity. But one of these x-rays is 2010 and the other x-ray is 2015. So that was kind of when I really started. I'm like, I got to find something that's working here because I'm in pain, I'm degrading, I work in the yard, and then the next day I'm down for the next day. And then it got to where I'd work in the yard, I'd be down for 2 days. I'm like, something's not right. And I've really got to find out what is going on. But if you look at the two-dimensional picture, everybody said the same thing. Clay, it's bad, but it's not that bad yet. So I was sitting in the tub one night, soaking my tired muscles, and I decided it's time to Google the suicide rate of adults with club feet. It's like, how many people off themselves because of this? And when I was looking at, found some medical articles and read them, I was like, oh yeah, I resonate with this. I understand what he's saying. And I saw another article. I was like, oh yeah, that's another good. I'm reading medical articles, I found that the authors of those articles were these two guys up in Baltimore. So I Googled them. They're at the Rubin Institute for Advanced Orthopedics at Mount Sinai Hospital. Don't cry. It's going to be much better later. If you're crying now, you can't cry now. Oh, my goodness. I thought you were going to heckle. That's the worst form of heckling is tears. So I get online, and lo and behold, these guys have their email address on the hospital website. So I fire up Herzenberg, that's who I thought the doctor was, said, hey, here's some x-rays that you see here. Here's what I've got going on. What do you think? In 10 minutes, I got an email back, and Herzenberg said, hey, I do the kids. Brad does the adults. And so he copied Brad, Dr. Lamb, and on my email. And then 8 minutes later after that, Lamb shoots me an email. It's like, hey, can't tell anything. Here's the number. Talk to so-and-so. Come on up. So I went on up, and after I'd been to multiple surgeons in this town, who all kind of said the same thing. I'm looking for something else, just like some of those guys on the internet were. And, he said the same thing. He herded me through his, entourage of fellows. And it's like, okay, Clay, yeah, you've got some things here, but, just keep waiting. It's best not to do anything yet. But while you're here, go down to the gait analysis lab. And, that way we can kind of get a baseline for what's going on. So, because they had an opening. It was the only opening they had all week. Just happened to be at my appointment time. So I go down, and they put the markers on me because we're going to watch how I walk. We're going to do a pressure study. And then what they found out was my right foot, the cavus foot, was never touching the ground. The heel would hit the ground. It had 60 PSI in a 2-inch circle. The guy said the most he's ever seen was 62. I weigh 180 pounds, so that was a lot. And all that was jamming up into my hip. The other foot, when it was rolling the other way, I had 56 PSI on the ball of my right foot, so I'm banging, and I wouldn't rotate. The cavus foot wouldn't allow the foot to walk. And this foot would just kind of pop off the middle. So it's like this clunky thing. And then as they, did the 3D analysis of me walking, my knee would rotate like a sine wave across center. Because what we identified there is I had the residual club foot had come back this way, and the tibia torsion that I'd always had was twisted the other way. So my knee would adjust for the tibia torsion one way and adjust for the residual club foot the other way. So it looks like I'm walking straight, but knees and hips and everything are just getting annihilated. So that's where everything was coming from with the pressure. So a lot of complex things. Probably every axis that I've got in my feet and ankle were twisted and deformed in some way. And that made it very difficult to walk. So the physical therapist, Anil Bate, who I have an unbelievable respect for excellent physical therapy at this point, because they truly were the ones who diagnosed me, got on the phone, called Lamb. Lamb and his entourage come down. They put out the gait analysis. They put out x-rays. I'm sitting over in the corner of the gait lab. It's 1:30 in the afternoon. I'm hungry. I want to have lunch. I'm tired, and I get to witness, I don't know how many times you guys get in a fight at the doctor's office, but these guys are barking at each other. Like, you got to look patella forward. You cannot do this. When you diagnose, you look patella forward. And then he's going back about, So finally, they walk over. And I have to say this. This was so funny. He's like, you cannot send him home if you do not look patella forward. So they come walking over, and they're like, Clay, you've got a pretty complicated situation, and we don't know what to do. But give us a few months, and we'll come up with something. And I was like, okay, I'll go home. But at least now we got something. And it was because we were able to do a 3D look. We were able to do motion. We were able to do something other than just a two-dimensional look. Okay, process you out of here. So that's essentially page one. And this is what we did. This is $12,000 worth of hardware. Does anybody want to play with it? Because it twists. If you really want to put your arm through it, that's just your arm. I had them on both legs. Does anyone want to see it? Okay, it's here if you want to see it. Those are called Taylor Spatial Frames. They're made by two brothers who are friends with Dr. Lamb and Herzenberg and that whole limb lengthening crew in the country. So one of the brothers is an orthopedist. One of the brothers is a aeronautical engineer, and he builds flight simulators. So that is a flight simulator, same thing as a flight simulator. It's on 6 axes. You can move and fine-tune anything. So if you want to grow bone down to a computerized, mapped, precision level, millimeter by millimeter, I turned each one of those struts every day for, good Lord, or the mother here took a crescent wrench and twisted those things every day for, what was it, 6 weeks? That was a hard 6 weeks, because some days we would skip them because I absolutely couldn't handle the bone being pulled. When we have 3 turns in a day, you move your bone 3 millimeters a day. That's rough. I will say that. And if you want to look at that long one with the green, the 180 millimeter, it got too short because we had to start here, and we grew it too far to where the strut had to be changed. And you didn't go. Jay Barrow went with me. So I flew up to Baltimore, and they had to change the strut out, and that strut wouldn't fit. So where 3 would bother me, the fellow who was taking it out and changing it out, she turned it about 6 times, and it still wouldn't fit. And so I grabbed onto the things, that you hang on to. Because luckily I was in not a normal room. I was in the room they had all the tools and the saws and the hammers and stuff. Which I thought was weird at first, but I'm glad I ended up being in that room for the handles. But we went up to 15, if I remember right, in about the span of 2 minutes. And she's screaming for help, and there's blood coming out of the pin. And I really think that's probably what screwed up this right one a little bit. I don't know completely. The right one's still not perfect. So the procedure we did was we cut the tibia in half, and then we were going to grow the tibias down into the bone. We're going to grow certain wedges. The left foot was going to have a wedge grown in this way to get it flat, and the right foot was going to have a wedge of bone grown to push my cavus foot down. And then when we cut the tibias in half, we lined it up. We fixed the residual club foot, did a tarsal tunnel release so the nerves won't freak out. Was that all we did? Just try to line everything up. It was an 8.5-hour surgery. I forgot how long they spent cutting out scar tissue from my previous surgeries when I was born, where they did tendon transfers because I don't have tendons on the front of my feet. Yeah, that was that. Go to pictures now, I guess. So you can see that's kind of what it looked like. There's the pins. Y'all have got the color photo, and that was pretty. And then one of the fun things about the Taylor Spatial Frames is when you've got a pin sight in there, your body moves, but the pins in the frame don't really move, so you're constantly grinding skin off. Let's not forget about how fun that is. That's the gory picture that you'll see. And then after 8 months in the fixators, it was time to, okay, let's get these things off. We're killing the guy. Actually, we almost did kill me. I was in the hospital for 5 days. We won't talk about that debacle. But anyway, when we took the fixators out, I got 3 screws in my right foot. Again, probably because we moved that puppy too much and did damage and put it back. I don't know, maybe it just grew slow. But so I still have the 3 screws. And then after a few months, it's like, I can feel this screw outside my ankle. This is not, this right foot was constantly swelling. And what we think happened was when everything lined up straight, because now I'm aligned like crazy, that where things had kind of grown and, the bone was like this, and when you put it straight, guess what? There's no ankle there anymore where there used to be an ankle. So every step I take is bone on bone, is swelling, is bad. So that's when we did this picture where we cut a big chunk of the bone out so I would have an ankle, and go from there. So those are the pictures and kind of what happened. So I just got done with a round of physical therapy, and I'm feeling pretty good. And that's where I kind of am today. I would say that when I went to my local orthopedist here because they kind of did this tag team thing, I went and saw Meg, and she's like, you know what, Clay? In 1 to 5 years, you're going to have an ankle replacement. And I'm like, this is great, because the bones are going to grow. There's just nothing there. Something's going to have to happen. And the good news is you're now aligned where this is an option for you. The bad news is they only last about 6 to 8 years if they're done right, and you're probably going to have 3 or 4 of them. And I'm like, why don't we just cut this thing off and be done with it? So that's kind of where we are. I don't want it to sound all bad, because yesterday I went to A-Day, and I walked to the stadium. I walked up the ramp. And a year and a half ago, you get on an incline, and I can't handle it. But I didn't even notice I was on an incline yesterday. So that's pretty cool. Jennifer asked me the other day, it's like, do you think it was worth it? I'm like, yeah, it was worth it. I mean, I traded one thing for another, but I'm playing with my kids. I can work in the yard and not fall apart. It's just where I am. So that's kind of the story that I'm going through. And probably the biggest thing right now is I'm trying to get stronger. Physical therapy will help that. But what's weird is something happened yesterday when I was walking. I walked 4 blocks, and then all of a sudden my foot is numb. There's pain in the ankle. It's tingling. And I don't know, is this good or bad? You just keep going with it, because my pain tolerance has gone up. So I'm always in some form of annoying pain. But it's like, we'll stop, we'll take my shoe off, we'll rub it, we'll get the swelling, get some blood moving. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Last night I was thinking it was a bad thing. In preparing for this, it's one of the lessons I want to learn. We immediately define something as good or bad. And I don't know if I need to just push it more and more and more so I can go further and further before that numbness happens. I don't know if I keep pushing it, it's a circulation issue, and I'm going to fall over, and we might as well just cut it off with a steel chainsaw at the time, just be done with it. So we're going to see where that goes. But we'll talk about that in a second. So, got to finish this thing up. So current status, what I'm really dealing with at night, while there are a lot of positives, sleeping is a challenge. I've got that apnea thing, so I hate fighting with the CPAP. But I have to put these splints on my feet to keep my feet tight, because if I don't, I'm genetically disposed, I guess, to my feet falling. The Achilles gets tight, and then I'll be walking with a cane at work. If you see me with my cane at work, it's why, because I had some bad days. So I'm either going to have a cane or I'm going to be, looking like I'm normal. There's not really much in between. So I've got those things on my feet, and you're dealing with still a little bit of the banging every day, trying to get the swelling down. But the neuropathy from knees down is really starting to tick me off, quite frankly. I don't know if y'all get to experience that fun thing. So I'm really trying to find the best ways to do that. So some of the ways to handle that, lidocaine, Oxycontin, Percocet, amitriptyline, tenanamine, a topical, a stimulator, heat, cold, hot bath, gabapentin, bourbon, all of these things in some form or another fit into how are we going to go to sleep tonight. Lost in Space is on Netflix is helping right now. I have a challenge. Work is real busy. We've got reorgs going on. My peers have a center of excellence where they have business analysts and developers and administrators. And my system has 200 more users than they do. And I don't have any analysts. I don't have any, administrators. It's me and a pretty good team of developers to support it. So, and then one contractor. So it's like they have a group doing requirements, I do my requirements. They have a group doing testing, I do my testing. They have a group making decisions, I do my decisions. And so pretty much in all the aspects of my life, my physical health, the craziness at work, and my family, things can be stressful. There's a lot going on. So if I'm ever, I don't know, I'm going to use the word pissy around anybody, I'm sorry. There's just sometimes a lot going on, and I may not be in a good place right then, even though I may look normal. Some people don't make, this is when you heckle. So I may look normal. There's usually a lot going on that you kind of have to struggle through. So with all of that said, you're left with two things, right? This is your story. This is what's going on. Actually, this is God's story that you're in. So path one, I realized that anger grows out of arrogance. I'm very arrogant. I'm in physical therapy, and this person's over there. Oh, how are you doing? Oh, I'm good. And they're on the physical therapist having a conversation. And, well, what's your pain level? Oh, it's a 6. Oh, it might be an 8. I'm like, y'all need to get away from me. Because there ain't no way. And so you get a little arrogant about things, and arrogance has a way of manifesting anger in your life. So I should have said it that way instead of pissy. There's injustice as a parent. You see injustice, like, why did this happen to me? Is this because my dad smoked when my mom was pregnant? Probably. Do I want to blame that on God? Probably. How do you reconcile all of those things about why this happened? But you get real judgmental. You look for some salve. You look for some type of, I need a couple of good minutes. And struggling with the loud kids who are screaming and doing things and fighting, finding a joyful moment there needs to be done instead of that being just something else that's, could y'all be quiet so I could have some peace and quiet? Because they're not going to be that age long. So that's one of my deals. Another choice is isolation. I'm real good at isolating myself. And you have these daily challenges, and you can get caught up in the bleak outlook, and that's one side of the equation with the story. But the other side that I do my best to focus on is one, strength. You get really strong going through something and coming out on the other side. You get really wise coming through something, and the other side, coming out on the other side. You experience love because, Jennifer takes care of so many things, and she could have run off. She should have run off, even before the club fit. But I wouldn't let her. I didn't run away. So she takes unbelievably good care of our house and our family and me. And when I get to a point where it's like I just have to chill, she's still washing clothes. She's still cooking something. She's constantly doing something. So I really get to experience not just all of the love that's part of that. There's a validation of God's goodness. That even in the story, when you're going through it, the connection I have to God is pretty incredible. Some of y'all might think these are intimate details. What I'm about to share is an intimate detail. It happened this morning, and I think God's telling me to say it. So I'm getting out of the shower, and I'm listening to music, trying to get my brain ready to talk about this today. And I find myself drying my hair and the towels over my face, and I'm still just getting out of the shower, and I hear in my head this connection that you get with God through all of this stuff. And this is how it's applicable to me. That I hear in my head, God says, I love you. And I'm like, okay, I heard that. I got it. I was like, I love you too. It's probably the first time I've really said that to him in that connection. And there's this, all right, another moment through this situation where God is reaching out to me. I have this connection, I have this relationship, and we are talking. And there's a peaceful thing there. And then about that time, it's like, oh, crap, I need to get down on my knees, right? I'm on holy ground. I've got to get down. That's what the Bible says. And it was like, then I hear something, no. Because Ephesians 6 says, and this is what we kind of need to see afresh again. I'm going to read the whole thing. I was going to end with this, but for this story, I'll do it now. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against rulers, against authorities, against the powers of this dark world, against the spiritual forces of evil in heavenly realms. Therefore, put on the full armor of God so that when the day of evil comes, you will be able to stand your ground. And after you have done everything, to stand. And that's what I heard in my head. It's like, don't get on your knees. Stand. Stand right here and talk to me. And that, Clay, are you still upset that you're club-footed? Not really. Are you upset that you're in pain or upset all this stuff? I still have to deal with that. But there are those moments when God and I talk and there's this connection and I start breaking down some of the baggage that I've got. He starts healing me in those moments. And that's the choice between list A of judgment and arrogance and isolation, or am I going to spend time putting on the armor of God and being able to stand in his presence? That's really what's coming from my story. It's 10:08. I'm going to read some couple things to try to wrap up. One of my favorite stories, my Army buddy John, he's helped me through this in a lot of ways, but he's not nice. He's not careful. He's seen a lot. He likes the story of one of David's mighty men, Shammah. It says, next to him was Shammah, the son of Hararite. When the Philistines banded together at a place where there was a full field of lentils, Israel's troops fled. But Shammah took his stand in the middle of the field. He defended it and struck the Philistines down, and the Lord brought about a great victory. So whatever story you're in, wherever you are, it's your story. People didn't understand Brian. People didn't understand, the clubfoot thing. People aren't going to understand what you're going through. But the Lord's going to bring about a great victory if you put on the armor and stand and don't run away. Because those are the lessons that I have. And this is where you've got to be careful. Is Clay teaching or is Clay, this is where you got to filter it. Don't pray away your test. See how strong and wise you can become. Soak it up even if it's hard. It's no one else's journey. They're not going to make it better. And quite frankly, from what I've seen, God's probably not going to take it away. It will evolve, but it won't fully be taken away. Paul's thorn, talked about that. Charlie talked about that last week. Look at the stories, and most of the time, like the fiery furnace. Oh, don't take us to the fiery furnace. What did they say? I'll go. I'll do what my God is calling me to go through, and he'll be there with you in it. So that's very challenging. A lot of times we're trying to just change the entire circumstances, and I don't know if he is going to do that. He may be waiting on you to do something. He was waiting on me to do something. At the same time, somebody may have a greater issue than you. Mine's getting better, although it's eventually going to get worse. I know other people have worse things. So I don't want to, there are people who have worse things. So it's always good to have that perspective. It's like, I don't want to have the poor me's all the time and pity myself and isolate myself because somebody, there's life and death on the line. There's other things. If you listen to music, the song "Into the Fire" by Bruce Springsteen talks about the firefighters on September 11th. There's blood in the sky and there's dust everywhere, and they run up the stairs into the fire. And the chorus of that thing is, may your strength give us strength. May your hope give us hope. May your love give us love. May your faith give us faith. So you see somebody else's story, and hopefully you can take something from that and become stronger. So Lord willing, you don't have to go through what some of these other people are having to go through and experience. Anyway, I'll move on from that. Help others despite your or because of your situation. If you are constantly thinking about yourself, you may not help others. That's my biggest thing, is I'm all about me, and I'm learning that I might need to help others, because that's the real example of Christ, right? He's being beaten, he's doing all these things, he's going through this story, he's truly being, destroyed, and yet he's helping someone. That could be our story. I don't know what we choose to do with that. One of the in one of the blogs, one of the lessons is to try things again, try things fresh. So I'll say redefine what failure is. There may be demons in your mind telling you that you failed and you can't do this, and sometimes you've got to reevaluate. You don't be so hard on yourself when you're in your story. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do. Put some of this stuff down and reimagine and rethink and move forward, and maybe even go back and start over and see what happens. I don't know if that will work or not, but that constant redefining is something that has to happen. Here again, I already said, God may not take your circumstances away, because you're not defined by your story. You're defined by the character that you exhibit during that story. One thing my buddy John talks about is Clay, what's the difference between bravery and courage? I'm like, well, why is that important? And it's like, when you start understanding your character traits, they become important to you, and you see them living in your life. If you're entitled and you want everything given to you and you just want everything taken away, there's no opportunity for you to put character traits into your life. So if character traits aren't important to you, then by all means, try to get out of your situation. I think that may be harsh to say. Again, filter Clay's anger, but something to think about when you're choosing what to do in your story. So at 10:14, last two things, reread Ephesians 6, the armor of God. And what does that mean in your story? Not just what does it mean and let's think about it, but here's my story. How do I fit the armor of God in here? And the last question would be, what exactly am I waiting on God to do? I'm waiting on him to fix something. I'm waiting on him to do something. I'm waiting on all these things. And how long am I willing to wait? Because if he's not going to fix it, if he's waiting on to work through me in it, I'm just going to be sitting here waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, and we get frustrated, and God's getting frustrated. He's like, when will you listen? And something, does that make sense? You're nodding. Thank you for your help. And so that's a question I would ask. What are you waiting on God to do, and how long are you willing to wait? Because there's two sides to those questions, and I think those are fun, interesting questions to kind of go through. So that's it. I don't want to run too long. Hopefully I didn't ramble too much, and there was a nugget here or something that you can take and process. But that's it. That's all my notes.